Well, welcome into another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast, everyone. Here on this, what is it, Wednesday? Wednesday now, August 26th. We're nearing college football season, everybody, a week and a half until kickoff for the Auburn Tigers. My name is Tyler Raley. Alongside me, Caleb Jones. We are getting ready, Caleb, inside 10 days now until kickoff for the Auburn Tigers in Atlanta. Of course, week 0. This weekend, we will be dialed into all the action going on. But Caleb, we had our mock game week viewing period yesterday. We'll get right into this. Our mock game week viewing period for the media yesterday at Auburn's practice, and we saw a lot of things. But for sure, how does it feel now, Caleb, that we're finally in that week stretch where we have college football season?
Dude, I'm so pumped to watch football in Ireland. I actually hate that the game is in Ireland. That makes no sense to me. I get neutral site games, but I'm really not a fan of them moving that game to freaking Ireland, dude. I mean, it's a cool opportunity, I think, for fans to go over there, and I'm not hating on Ireland, okay? Ireland's freaking sweet. I'd love to go over there, but why are we playing? Why is TCU and North Carolina playing over there? What is their what's the draw for people?
Right. It's. I think it's definitely going to be one of those things that it's the charm of the game, at least in this instance. The week 0 opening that game. It's a cool location, I guess. Something probably we as general fans of the game will never truly be able to understand, but it's something that definitely draws our attention. Of course, a lot of week 0 action going on. A pretty decent slate of games, including in-state guys from Jacksonville State heading up to Fargo to play North Dakota State, and then you've got Virginia and NC State playing in Charlottesville this weekend. That game originally having supposed to be in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, but got moved back to Charlottesville for this week 0 matchup. But Caleb, back to the topic that we were really here to focus on today, and that's Auburn's practice here in mock game week for the Tigers, a tradition that Alex Golesh has carried on for a long time. We heard in his press conference the other day that they've been carrying this on. At least in his career, it's been something since he remembered back to 2008 when he was at Oklahoma State as a grad assistant with Mike Gundy, and Gundy didn't like the way things turned out that season opener, and Golesh quickly figured out maybe if we just tell them sooner what to do, that they will put it into effect better. But Caleb, a lot went on, and you got to check out a lot of the offense. So we'll start at the quarterback position. You mentioned yesterday in your observations how Byrum Brown, the presumed starting quarterback at this point, pretty much 99.999% accuracy, whatever you want to call it in there, is going to be the starting quarterback. But his deep accuracy really showed out to you yesterday, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how you thought Byrum performed in that practice period.
Well, that note actually came from Jay Douglas. He's talking about, Byrum had a pretty good deep ball. I think he connected to somebody there, and then I think Tristan Tia may have had a little bit of an overthrow on one of his passes. I mean, it's another practice. Guys are going to have good plays. Guys are going to have bad plays. It's not something you really need to, I think, read too deep into. If the guy has a really good deep ball. Now, consistency, that's the key anytime you have a quarterback. So can he consistently deliver that deep ball? I don't know if we're going to see that deep ball too much on week 1. I think Auburn's game plan is going to be to run the ball against Baylor. I think that's a defense that really struggled to contain Auburn last season running the ball. Jeremiah Cobb was able to run all over him. Jackson Arnold, of course, looked really good, and I think that's a matchup that plays really big into somebody like Byrum's strength, which is he's a really good running quarterback. He can throw the ball, but he's going to hurt you a lot with his legs. He's a tough, he's a physical guy. So I'm excited to see Byrum not just throw the ball, but really run the ball against Baylor in about a week and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a dual threat mindset for him. Something that has been honestly a positive for Auburn teams in the past that have had success. You look at Cam Newton, not the biggest runner in the world, but he was in fact big, and he used his size to really play to his strengths and ran the ball really well, especially in short distances. You look at guys like Nick Marshall, who had great mobility. Bo Nix had great mobility to an extent. Jarrett Stidham did some things with his legs, but you look at Byrum and he's got a lot of running mobility to use there, and I'm sure Golesh and offensive coordinator Joel Gordon will utilize that to its fullest extent. But of course, the wide receivers on the other end of that passing game, Caleb, that a question mark that has been, I don't want to say inconsistent, but it's been a highly talked about subject throughout the Auburn camp here in preseason mode. Of course, you got just two guys who are in essence going to get major playing time that were upperclassmen and Chaz Nimrod and Keyshawn Singleton, but then you have a host of young guys in there. And one of the guys that was mentioned this morning by us as a staff on our Impacting Auburn series, Jeremiah Koger, the sophomore wide receiver out of Baltimore, has really shown out during this camp, has been talked about highly, has some great catches under him in the scrimmages that and the lone surprise team period that we saw, and then some things we heard from the actual team scrimmages. Caleb, what do you think Koger provides to this wide receiving core that will be key for him to succeed with come these first few games of the regular season?
Yeah, I think he provides just another weapon for Auburn to use. Somebody that, we've heard he's young, but he's got the potential to be a really good player. He's got all the tools and everything. It's just, can he piece it together in games? And, I think it's just another guy that Auburn can use. Somebody that hasn't maybe played as much as a guy like Keyshawn Singleton or doesn't have the SEC experience that Chaz Nimrod has. So, but, that's a guy that Auburn looked at and said that's somebody that they want to bring with them from USF. And I'm excited to kind of see what he can contribute, because I've heard a lot of good things about him and just the tools that he has, the potential that he has. Can he reach that potential, or can he start climbing that potential this season?
Yeah, of course, 6'3", all of him, all 6'3", and he's got a lot of height that should provide him a great matchup against a smaller cornerback, should he be matched up against him in that way. And definitely, he was an effective pass catcher last year, second on the Bulls over at USF in total yardage behind Singleton, pretty comfortably behind Singleton, but nonetheless, that's big for a freshman of his caliber to be able to make those plays and rack up the yardage like he did. But another thing, Caleb, in terms of the receiving front that has been a big topic of Golesh as of late is the way the tight end room has settled out. Of course, Jake Johnson being pretty much the clear front runner has shown his size, shown his veteran experience as a tight end. Of course, coming from North Carolina and Bill Belichick's system, formerly also of Texas A&M for a couple of years, and then you've got a guy like Arlis Boardingham who was a Florida guy for a couple of years, and you got those two tight ends who have really separated themselves from the rest of the room. How happy do you have to be, especially a heavy topic has been the red zone lately, for these tight ends to be utilized in such a great way, considering their size as well?
Yeah, Auburn's tight ends have not exactly been that room hasn't been a strength of Auburn in several years, and so I'm still I don't know, everything about Auburn football over the last couple of years has me hesitant. I'm a little bit more hesitant to say this is a strength of Auburn's team, or this is some place that could be a really good place for Auburn, like a really good spot for Auburn. They could utilize it. I don't know, man. I'm still a little skeptical on that. I'm anticipating the tight end usage is going to go up because Golesh has historically been a tight end guy. But are these the guys that are going to kind of come in and I want to see, can these guys impact this offense? The way that Golesh has used tight ends in the past, is it going to be that usage that you see? I'm excited to kind of see that. Johnson's certainly a guy, Jake Johnson, a guy that has the skill set, that has the college experience to be somebody. Is it going to be? Can he impact the Baylor game? Is kind of the biggest question for me, and I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's going to be something that remains to be seen until it's utilized in week one. Whether how they use it, how often they use the tight ends, where will that direction move in, or what direction will that piece move in going forward? I'm sure Alex Golesh has a plan for them. Just a variety is what we've heard, and until you see it on the field, I think you said it perfectly. It remains to be seen. I think you have to see it on the field to believe it if you're an Auburn fan, and that's really with any position group, especially guys who play on the front lines like the tight end, the O-line, as you mentioned. Moving into that part of the offense, Caleb, you got to talk with our friends at Three Men Front recently, and one of the things you did mention was the inconsistency of the O-line over the better part of, who knows how long. The Auburn fans who are way older than us and have seen a lot more football, they may have seen offensive lines that were just as inconsistent in the past, but the offensive line over the better part of the last decade has not been great for Auburn. And so what do you take of this offensive line right now, Caleb? Because it seems like they're moving closer, as Golesh has said, to a quote-unquote defined starting five. But honestly, it doesn't feel like that at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line is always going to be a huge question. I think for Auburn, especially new staff, new offensive line completely. I mean, Auburn, like you look at last year, you had a guy like Xavier Chaplin who you thought was going to be a really good player and just didn't pan out to be the guy that you maybe thought. You thought for sure, like, oh, finally, Auburn has a left tackle. Auburn's got a guy. And he just wasn't the player that Auburn fans had kind of hoped that he'd be. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Everything is purely skeptical until you get on the field, I think. I think Stanton Ramil has done a great job working and getting back healthy. He's really good for Michigan State. Joe Simmons was fantastic for James Madison, but is it going to piece together? Is it going to click at Auburn? And that's just something, like, along with a lot of things lately, it's just like that's remained to be seen. It's not, you're not going to find that stuff out until game one. But I do think that the guys have had that correct approach. They've had physical practices with Coach Hoodie. That's a guy that has encouraged them to be aggressive, has encouraged them to hit guys. That's what you want out of an offensive line group. That's what you want out of an offensive line coach, somebody that's going to be really aggressive, somebody that's going to, employ in his players that, hey, when you go out there, go and hit somebody, go and bring the physicality. And Auburn's got to do that against Baylor, especially if they're trying to run the ball against Baylor. Like, this is an offensive line that's going to have to step up and figure some things out. There's certainly going to be, I think, some bumps along the way, as far as how this offensive line kind of comes together. They're certainly probably not going to play the cleanest game against Baylor. I don't think any offensive line that hasn't had any previous starts together, aside from, Cole Best and Cole Skinner, those are the only two guys on the offensive line that have had starts together. So I'd expect some bumps along the way, but I want to go and I want to see aggressiveness. That's really what I want to see from this group when they tee it up against Baylor.
Yeah, definitely something to watch out for as we move along. Of course, not really. You'd be hard-pressed to find a good amount of teams who definitely have their offensive line fully defined. They know what they're going to do, and you have those select programs, maybe like Texas A&M, who has historically been in contention for that Joe Moore Award, and we'll see what happens come day one. But I do agree there will be some bumps along the way, but you've seen a lot of push from this coaching staff over the course of preseason camp to go out, be aggressive, and drive with urgency. And that's something we saw yesterday in the viewing session was offensive line working on one-on-one drills and three-man sets, working on formations and scheming, just to be able to drive and make sure they can hold that block for an extended period of time, try and give Byrum Brown as much protection as he possibly can. But flipping over the defensive side of the ball, Caleb, we look at a defense who we've talked about time and time again has this potential that is through the roof and has a chance to be one of an elite defense. And we saw what DJ Durkin did last year is giving Auburn fans some hope as to what this continued success can bring. What's your biggest question mark right now on the defense as we have 10 days away from kickoff in Atlanta?
Who's going to step up at cornerback? I think that's the biggest question. I think your safety room is pretty deep. I feel like you feel pretty good about who you got back there, but cornerback is going to be kind of the question mark for me. Andre Jordan is a guy they brought in from UCLA to kind of maybe take one of those starting roles, but we've heard some good things about Rashawn Pleasant, stepping up and kind of, improving there. But I mean, you have guys like Blake Woodby, who played a lot of nickel last season at Auburn. Shamar Arnaud played at Florida State, had some good snaps there, but who's going to be that guy that steps up? Gavin Jenkins is another one that that played at USF last season. That's kind of my biggest question mark. I feel really good about where the linebackers are. I mean, I think anybody should with Xavier Atkins, Elijah Melendez. I feel really good about the defensive line. I think Vontrell Queen-Williams will have those guys ready to play. That's a pretty sure rotation there where they're going to have a lot of guys rotating in and out, staying fresh. But yeah, I think corner is the biggest question. You can even see Champ Anthony line up there, as somewhere at the nickel as well. But that's going to be the biggest question for me is at cornerback and who's going to be the two guys that step up the most.
Yeah, of course, a lot of rotation probably happening back there in the secondary, as we've heard from the position coaches, as we've heard from DJ Jerkin, as we've heard from Alex Golesh. It's been a consistent answer of where does this rotation fit in. They have a lot of maneuvering around, especially with some of the safeties rotating through all 5 spots. You mentioned Champ Anthony, New Boy Fagans, Sylvester Smith-Reed, among those who are rotating across all 5 spots. And especially, we talked about it a few days ago, the development of Bryce Kane moving over to corner and him being a depth piece. Now, he's probably not going to be this direct starter at corner that you're just going to plug in and he's going to play all 12 regular season games on a 80% of downs basis. But that's something that they did to give him depth, a chance to build at playing time, and we'll see where his agility takes him as time goes on. But I agree with you, Caleb. The strength of the strength of the linebacking core. When I walk out to practice and I look at Atkins and Melendez, man, sometimes it scares me. I don't want to get in a fight with those two. You don't want to get in a fight with any of these football players, but especially Melendez and Atkins. Man, I swear if you ever get into a disagreement, you better just call off the dogs quick because you're not going to win that fight. But when you look at this linebacking core, a lot of young experience. Atkins being that senior who has everything about him. He's preseason first team All SEC selection this year, and then you've got Elijah Melendez, the sophomore, who is just everything about him screams energy and aggressiveness. That you've got to feel that not a bold statement, but do we think that this linebacking core, Caleb, could be one of that has the potential to be one of the best in Auburn history? I know it's a bold statement, but I mean, the question's there. It is.
The potential is there, sure. I think it's so early, man. It's hard to tell. I mean, Xavier Atkins put together an insane season last year, and I think he can absolutely replicate that. But it would also take a really big step up from Elijah Melendez, to make that and put them really in the conversation there. Elijah's still young, he's still got some things that he's got to learn. But he's got an opportunity, to start all 12 games for Auburn, potentially more, if Auburn has a really good season. You would hope that he has a potential to start a bowl game. I mean, I think I've talked about it before. That's absolutely Auburn needs to be in a bowl game this year, without question. I think if you're not targeting X amount of wins if you're goalless. You're just trying to go out and win every game, obviously. But right. I think Auburn fans really are hoping to see, maybe 8 wins. I think 7 is more realistic. I think 6 would be you would take it. But I think if you're an Auburn fan, you want 7 wins at a minimum. And then you'll see the occasional feeling confident, claiming Auburn's going to go win 10 games. I don't.
Are you one of those people, Caleb?
No, I'm not. I think 7-5. I think 7-5 is a great first season if you're Alex Golesh. Go win 7 games. Maybe have an upset or 2, win a game that you're not supposed to, and maybe you can get to 8-4, dude. If you get to 8-4, that's a great season. I think great first season. But yeah. Sorry, we got a little off topic there, but yeah, the linebackers are definitely the strength of this team. There's been so many good linebackers though to come out of Auburn, so it's really tough to say if that duo. I mean, we'll see in 12 weeks or 14 weeks or however long the season is.
Yeah, I think it'll take. Realistically, I joke about
It's
it.
gonna take another big season from X,
Yeah.
and then just a great season from the Freak. That's
Yeah.
Elijah Melendez's Twitter handle, by the way, the Freak. So I mean,
Yeah,
Owen Papo was the Freak back in the not back in the day, dude, but just like 5 years ago.
Stop making him out to be old. We don't need him coming and commenting that trying to prove you wrong, Caleb. But man, it's one of those things. I do agree. It will take a while. Genuinely, I joke about it, but it will probably. You'll find out an answer in the first half of the season on whether this linebacking core is on the right track to be of that caliber.
Florida game, circle the Florida game. That's when you'll find out. And I think a lot of people are finding out just how big of a rivalry Auburn and Florida is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't realize how big of a rivalry it is, and now it's starting to emerge on Twitter. It's been so fun to watch, dude.
That's exactly right. 2011, the last time these two teams played in Jordan-Hare. 2019, the last time these two played overall. But certainly that Florida game.
Nix, dude.
Yes, dude. Bo Nix, man. Patrick Nix, his dad having been a legend in that series in a win down in Gainesville. But I think you look at this, you look at that Florida game overall, Caleb, it's the third game of the season, but it's almost like a turning point for what this year is going to hold. It's the first SEC game. It's your first, it's not your first nighttime home game, but it's your first marquee matchup of the season. And you look at just all the parameters surrounding it and just all the chaos, all the banter that's going on. And you've got to think, like, where does this game stack up amongst magnitude of the season? Because, of course, you've got Alabama and Georgia up there at the top. But in terms of magnitude, it's almost destined to say that this Florida game right there is number 3 on that list.
Dude, I honestly – all right, this might be a hot take. I'm like, as far as games this season of importance for Auburn, obviously the Iron Bowl and the Georgia game are absolutely huge, okay? And I'm not saying the Florida rivalry is above those. But as far as games on Auburn's schedule that I think like have a chance to be incredibly special, I'm putting the Florida game at the top, okay? This is a game that you look at the coaching matchup, okay? It's Alex Golesh, John Summerall. John Summerall, the guy that a lot of people thought Auburn might hire. I think this is going to – that's a game where I think a lot of Auburn fans are looking to see, did John Cohen make the right hire? Did Cohen get the right guy? And then you're also just restoring such a historic rivalry with so many good moments. It's in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's at night. It's on national television. That's exactly like how Florida Auburn should be. And that's why it's like number 1. It's at the top for me as far as like games that I am most excited to watch Auburn play in. Is because of the history, the importance of this game, just like the coaching matchup. I think it's higher than Georgia and Alabama this season, just because of all that hype around it and all the excitement around that. Also, it's the home game. It's the home game. Georgia and Alabama are away games this year, and okay. Auburn hasn't done anything in Athens or Tuscaloosa in the last 15 years. Is what it feels like. So, give me Auburn, Florida all day at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
No, I can get behind that easily. And it's that game, and then in a way, it's the LSU game later in the month of October. Well, no, hold on. Don't
bro, that game. Oh, they butchered that, bro. 11 a.m.
Yeah, 11 a.m. game. Now, don't get me wrong. An 11 a.m. game, you just look at it and, oh, my gosh. But it's a chance, I think, for if you're an Auburn fan, that for that team to capitalize. And with all the drama, which we're about to get to here in a couple minutes, surrounding Lane Kiffin and LSU, you've got to think that game itself, man, it's one of those things that could just stir the pot a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, especially due to LSU's having a good season. Mm-hmm. That game could get really interesting. LSU walking into Jordan-Hare. I don't think there's any coach out there that's getting more hatred from all fan bases than LSU and Lane Kiffin. Dude, LSU's got they got the 3 coaches right now that it seems like everybody's getting upset with. They've got Lane Kiffin, They got Will Wade coaching basketball, and then Kim Mulkey just had there's some drama going on with that program right now with one of their players leaving after Kim Mulkey brought in a transfer from Russia, the Ukrainian player leaving. There's some drama there. So I mean, dude, LSU is like must-watch TV right now. There is a lot going on right there, and I think do you want to go ahead and get to what we were getting to?
Yeah. Of course, we talked about it. LSU, man, it's at the same. Of course, it's surrounding all of college football. So let's preface that right now. It is surrounding all of college football, but LSU right now is the main subject of this documentary that I don't know what we're going to call it yet. But LSU and Lane Kiffin, all the things going on today. Of course, we've been hearing about all these preliminary injunctions, the TROs that are going on or surrounding eligibility in the NCAA. Of course, the SEC president's meeting last night and formulating a ruling that the SEC teams are against players from the NFL or the NBA or the WNBA coming back and playing for their collegiate programs. Of course, the main subject of this being LSU, former Ole Miss player and former player of Lane Kiffin, Daquan Wright, having been with the Cleveland Browns and now trying to come back and play for LSU. I believe it's the Cleveland Browns. Don't quote me on that. I'm sitting here trying to process this like everybody else is. But that he is the main subject of all this. And then the SEC just earlier today I think it was earlier today coming to a vote on penalties for this. And they essentially said that if a team is to violate these rules and bring back a player from the pros on to play college ball, they're going to have a number of penalties, and that includes a coach suspension for half of the season. Now, whether that includes bowl season and all the college football playoff stuff, I think that's to be determined. I'm not quite sure yet. So you've got that. You've got the absentation on, or you're leaving them out, exclusion on any voting matters that comes before the board. And then the other thing being that you eliminate half of a team's budget for that particular sport. So I think I heard when I was just in the car earlier riding home, I was listening to Paul Feinbaum, or it was 3 Man Front, one of the two shows, and they were talking about how LSU had a budget in 2025 of approximately $52.3 million. Now that's a lot. That's a lot in the grand scheme of things. You're talking about taking away half of that and putting that as $26.15 million of your budget for LSU football. That's a grand scheme of things. Caleb, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Of course, you know, we don't understand 100% of it. We still got a lot of studying to do on this matter. But in the grand scheme of things, how big was this ruling for the SEC to make over the past 48 hours?
Well, the SEC could have done nothing, or they could have done something, and I think everybody is glad they did something. If you do absolutely nothing, man, there's no telling like where this could have gone. But I think you're kind of finally seeing a conference put their foot down, and the pros and the G leagues or the NFL mini camps, all that stuff. You're finally seeing a conference put their foot down and just say this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work. You violate this. These are the consequences. So I'm glad to see the SEC. I'm glad to see the Big Ten, the Big 12 finally put their foot down and say something and kind of establish some sort of ground rule in a sport finally.
Of course, the Big Ten also releasing a statement prior to the SEC's release. Now, so the Big Ten were the ones that initially put their foot down. The SEC followed suit, and Notre Dame, of course, being an independent school, they were in contact with both the SEC and the Big Ten, and they also agreed to put their foot down in going against the action of having pro players play in college sports again after they've signed a contract. It's one of those things that myself, I'm definitely going to have to do a lot of studying up on, because admittedly, I'm not the best expert on this opinion. There are a lot more people who have a lot more knowledge than me and are bigger experts on this subject matter. I would need to go through all the court documents and whatever else I can find to make that matter. But those are the basic facts at this point in time. Of course, with LSU being, it seems like it's never ending for Lane Kiffin and co. For him to be at the center of all this drama. But at the end of the day, can you really blame Lane Kiffin for what he was doing? He's having his school's own interest in mind. And you look at the votes, man, Caleb. This 16-0 on this initial statement of being against pro athletes, and then coming out today was that it was a 15-0 vote on the penalties, with LSU being an abstention from the vote of in the board of the presidents. Where do we go now as far as is college football beyond saving anymore from this matter? Is it something that's a foregone conclusion that we are in a new era of college football, but is it going to be able to be saved anymore and brought back to what it used to be, where players, I mean, they still cared about money, but obviously they cared about, a genuine sport?
Man, I don't know if it's ever going to be the same. I will say this recent ruling is a big step in the right direction, I think, of just letting that, like, almost slowing down the evolution, I would say, of college football. And when I say evolution, I don't mean it in like a good sense. I felt like the sport was heading in a really bad direction with all the NFL players, or former, I don't even know what to call them, semi-professional, full pro. It's professional. That's what it is. But I don't know if you're going to be able to go back to what it used to be. But I think you can kind of prevent it from spiraling and from a downward spiral into a really bad direction, and taking it to a place where it becomes even more or less enjoyable than it kind of already is. As far as when I say more or less enjoyable, I don't mean anything like, I don't mean anything bad by that. What I mean by that is it's gotten away from what a lot of people are used to, and what the traditional college football really is. I'm all for players, getting their fair share, and just being able to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. But at some point, you got to hang it up. At some point, you got to draw the line and say, look, it's over. I think at some point, I think that's something that a lot of people, have to accept at some point in their lives. And I'm all for, like, dude, if you can find a loophole and you're trying to exploit these loopholes, why not? I'm not putting any players or Lane Kiffin or anybody at fault for trying to do what's best for them, what's best to do for their program. But there need to be some clear guidelines, going forward about everything in this category.
Well, we'll definitely see. Of course, we, as much as has happened in the last 48 hours, news could be coming out 5 minutes from now on updates in this case, and we shall see where it goes. Of course, we will be we're praying for all the national sports reporters who are covering this issue. We will be following it from a more local standpoint. Of course, Auburn not really directly tied to it right now, but it's always a possibility it could come into play. But especially those LSU writers, Caleb, we will be praying for them as they cover this matter. But Caleb, I want to turn our attention to another thing that broke this morning regarding Auburn and the basketball program. Auburn and Alabama have agreed to play a preseason exhibition game in Birmingham on October 22nd in Legacy Arena, with the stipulation that if this game sells out, I think it's, legally you have to say if, but I would imagine when this game sells out, that the both schools will get upwards of six figures in total funding to help out with their program. A very interesting move, to say the least. In my personal opinion, I'm sure in everybody's personal opinion, it's one of those moves that's very interesting, especially considering both Auburn and Alabama are playing in the Ballin and Boutwell exhibition series just a week prior on October 14th and 15th, maybe. But what do you make of this? Just the initial thoughts as it comes out that these two arch rivals and Nate Oates and Stephen Pearl are going to compete in Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, it's going. Sorry about that. But no, I think it's a good thing for Auburn and Alabama to have those the potential to make some money here. I mean, it's the same reason why the game against Baylor was moved to Atlanta. To do well for the future of your program. So the fact that Auburn and Alabama, I don't know. It's almost like seeing two enemies come together for the better of both. That's really what it boils down to. I mean,
never.
Well, like, if it's Auburn versus, I don't know, New Hampshire, dude, that's not gonna do much.
The draw, yeah.
The draw is nothing. You can be like, oh, if Auburn and New Hampshire and freaking Ireland, for all that matters, to bring in, but the draw is Auburn, Alabama, and with it being in Legacy and Birmingham, man, you're gonna get people there. You're gonna get high interest, and this is a great opportunity for, I think, a lot of fans that maybe aren't able to make it down to Auburn or Tuscaloosa for a big time regular season SEC clash. In January, February, March, whenever it may be, when those ticket prices are way high. I'm begging to bet this is probably going to be a little cheaper of an option for a lot of people, and this is an opportunity maybe for some fans that don't get an opportunity to see their teams play, because these programs have advanced in a really, really good direction. Like, these are some of the top programs now that get talked about. So opportunity for some more casual fans, or some fans that maybe don't have a chance to see these teams play in the regular season. Now they get to go and they can say they got to see Auburn and Alabama play in Legacy Arena. And just an exhibition match nonetheless. But this rivalry is still going to carry some weight. It's going to – whoever wins this game and the exhibition game, for a fact they're going to carry this all the way down to the next matchup,
Yeah, definitely. I was about to say, I can't wait to see these two teams inevitably split in the regular season, and then someone try to use this as a tipping point, as the quote-unquote rubber match, despite it being the first game of the year. Of course, Auburn and Alabama will play on January 30th in Tuscaloosa and March 6th in Neville Arena to close out the SEC regular season. I want to read the statement, the quote that we got in the media release from Stephen Pearl, what he said about this game. So this is exactly directly quoted from what we get. And so what he said about this game: our goal is scheduling exhibition games is to play quality opponents to test ourselves before the season officially begins. Playing a team like Alabama provides us an incredible opportunity to accomplish that goal, while obviously giving our fans, our state, and the entire basketball world a unique opportunity to see two rivals face off at a neutral site. The entire nation will be watching, and we are excited to represent Auburn University in what will be an unprecedented exhibition event. And I think that last part is very key in what we just talked about, an unprecedented exhibition event. As far as the direction that these two teams have moved in over the last decade in the sport of basketball, both these teams have since made a Final Four and have made runs that people, if you asked them 25 years ago, that they would have told you that you were crazy to say that Auburn or Alabama would have been making a Final Four at this point in history. It's just one of those frank statements. Of course, Alabama had won both matchups last year in 2025. Auburn not making the NCAA tournament, instead winning the NIT championship up in Indianapolis. Alabama being bounced, I believe, in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament last year. But I think you just look at this game, it's an opportunity for both sides to really see what each other's got. And tempers will flare. That's a non-negotiable. The tempers will flare. And I think you will see that at some point. I don't be shocked if it's right from the jump of this game that the tempers start flaring and things go spiraling. But yeah, ultimately, Auburn and Alabama, October 22nd in Birmingham at Legacy Arena. Ticket pre-sales will run from August 27th through 31st, while tickets to the general public will go on sale on Tuesday, September 1st. So very soon, tomorrow will be when the pre-sale starts. And it's the second the second exhibition game, rather, that Auburn will be playing here in the month of October. Of course, 8 days prior, we'll be playing Florida State in Ballin and Boutwell, while Alabama takes on Ole Miss. Those things have not gone away because of this scheduling. It is just simply an addition to what the exhibition schedule is. But Caleb, yeah, we've talked a lot today, just on a variety of topics. Of course, another great session, 10 days away from Auburn football kicking off in Atlanta. Of course, just a couple days away from week 0. You got any bold takes that we can pin you for going into week 0 here as we kick off this college football season?
Like about week 0 in general, or just about?
I mean, yeah, we'll go week 0. Anything you want to put out there on the record?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know about bold per se. I gotta look at what's the slate? Do you have the slate in front of you by chance?
I mean, it really, the 3 games I'm caring about are the Jacksonville State game, you got the North Carolina TCU game, and you've got the Virginia NC State game. Of course, those are just 3 of them, but you've got some good matchups there, honestly.
All right, give me North Carolina to lose to TCU. Give me TCU all the way. I'm taking the Horned Frogs. I'm going to take North Dakota State, and I will take Virginia. Why not?
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Virginia beginning the I think the Bo Perbula era out there in Charlottesville. We'll definitely see what all of that has to offer. I'm seeing if I can pull up real quick before we jump off the line for these games. Of course, that Jacksonville State game will be something I keep my eye on, because I think that's actually a rather interesting matchup. You think with JSU and Charles Kelly going up to Fargo to play in the Fargo Dome. North Dakota State favored by 7 in that game. Give me North Dakota State to cover, but I would say maybe by 9 points is what I'm drawing there. I think Jacksonville State actually keeps it pretty close to open up the season. 4:30 Central Time on the CBS Sports Network. But yeah, Caleb, another great session talking Auburn football. Of course, Tiger Talk, the first one of the season, going live from the Graduate Hotel here on the Plains tonight at 6 p.m. Alex Golesh will be there talking with Andy Bertram and John Cohen just about what's to come for Auburn football. Will be a weekly occurrence on Wednesdays. I believe after this week it will be at Baumhauer's here in Auburn, and we shall see what that brings for the rest of the season. But yes, college football is upon us, everybody. We are here. We finally made it, and it is time to begin the season. But Auburn's still got another week left, week and a half left before they take the field, and we shall see what that action brings. But that's going to do it for us here on the Auburn Undercover podcast. He is Caleb Jones. My name is Tyler Raley. We hope you all have a great day, and continue to follow us here at auburnundercover.com.